welcome to another episode on mastering quadratic equations. So we've been exploring so much lately, and today we are going to dive into one more method of solving the quadratic equation, and of course that is completing the square. It is also a very short and easy method to use, but again we are going to use some idea of the factoring method, where we'll just factor one more time and we'll be able to solve that equation by completing the square. Remember, you can be asked to use any of these methods, and of course when asked you won't be lacking. So without wasting much time, let's go straight to an example. Say solve. 6x plus 8 equals 0. Now, so the first step, we have to write that equation in standard form. So we must make it to be in the general form: ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, which already it is. So that's the first step when completing the square. Make it to be in the standard form, the general form. Remember, why do I say so? You can be given this equation like this: x squared plus 6x equal minus 8, or minus x squared is equal to 6x plus 8. Excuse me. It can be manipulated in any of those forms. So what you need to do when you have to complete the square, you must bring it in the general form or the standard form. So that's the first step. So we are lucky enough, fortunate, we have it already in a standard form. Thank you. So what will you need to do if in case like this? So you need to make sure you bring every term on one side and make sure you try to bring it, let it be positive. All right, so the next step. So now the next step, divide both sides of the equation by 1. So why are we dividing both sides of the equation by 1? You need to divide it by 1 so that the coefficient of x squared must be 1. So let's say we had our equation was 2x squared. You must divide all through by 2 in this case, so that our coefficient of x squared should be 1. So it should always be 1. That's the next step. So if we had to, we'll divide all through by 2. So you notice we'll be dividing by 2, dividing by 2. And of course, when we divide 2 by 2, you now see that the coefficient of x squared here will be 1. But again, this is a very straightforward quadratic equation. We just explained everything. So since our quadratic equation is simply x squared, so we divide all through by 1 to make it standard. The coefficient should be 1. So dividing all through by 1 is still the same thing. All right. So our a is already 1. So in other words, I'm trying to say, in case you have your a maybe 2, 3, or any other number, you divide all through by the a so that the coefficient of x squared will be 1. Now, the next step, that's step 3, we need to move the constant term to the right of the equation. What is our constant term here? Remember, our constant term is 8, so we move it to the right, and of course we are left with x squared plus 6x is equal to negative 8. So that's the next step. Now, the fourth step, we have to add b over 2 all squared on both sides of the equation. So the fourth step, we have to add b over 2 all squared to both sides of the equation. That's just the law. You just have to follow it. It's a law of completing the square. So add b over 2 all squared to both sides of the equation. What's our b? Our b is 6. So 6 over 2 all squared, which is 6 divided by 2, that's 3. So all squared, that's 3 squared, which is 9. So the b over 2 all squared, in every case, you take the b over 2 for the fourth process, the fourth step, you add it to both sides of the equation. So it means we are adding 9 to both sides of the equation. All right. So adding 9 to both sides of the equation, we now have x squared plus 9 should be equal to minus 8 plus 9. So what do you notice? We now have x squared plus 6x plus 9 is equal to minus 8 plus 9 is number line, is 9 minus 8, and that's 1. Now, why are we adding b over 2 all squared to both sides of the equation? Remember I mentioned we have to introduce the system of factoring. From here now, you see when it's in this form, you now notice that we cannot factorize this, right? Yeah, we cannot factorize this, because factorizing, we need to start looking for the product, and 6 and 8, it don't match. We cannot have two exact values. Now, the next step, we factor the left hand side of the equation. Remember, factoring this, we saw that already. We are going to have x plus 3 into x plus 3, and that's equal to 1. So when we factor this, this is what we are going to have. So factor just the left hand side, and remember x plus 3 is the same as x plus 3 all squared, and this is equal to 1. X plus 3, x plus 3. So we are multiplying x plus 3 twice. Remember, this is the same as 2 multiplied by 2. 2 multiplied by 2, I told you indices, it means 2 times 2, which is 2 to the power 2 to itself. So this is exactly what has happened here. Okay, good. All right, so our next step, that should be step 5. Okay, sorry, step 6. Now we have to solve for x. But how do we solve for x? We take the square root of both sides of the equation. We have to solve for x. So what do? We take the square root sign of both sides of the equation. So we take square root of x plus 3 all squared is equal to the square root of 1. That's it. So we square both sides of the equation. After factoring, how do we take care? Because we want to take care of the square root sign. This 2 cancels with this, and we are left with x plus 3. So x plus 3 is equal to the square root of 1. Remember, when we have the square root on the right hand side, we are talking of plus or minus the square root. Remember, we're dealing with a quadratic equation. And what's the square root of 1? Again, it is simply 1. So we have x plus 3 should be equal to plus or minus 1, because the square root of 1 is 1. Now, x should be equal to, we are sending 3 to the side, so we have, let's take the positive part first. We have 1, 3 becomes negative minus 3. So this is the first value, x1. We take the positive side. Remember, 3 becomes negative 1, and that is 1 minus 3 is minus 2. And x2 is the same as, we take the negative part. So negative 1 minus 3. And that is negative 4. So x1 is equal to negative 1, x2 is equal to negative 4. So we are saying negative 1, negative 2, and negative 4. So these are the solutions of the equation. X is equal to negative 2 or x is equal to negative 4. So that is exactly how we solve the quadratic equation by completing the square, just following those simple steps. Remember the highlight, make sure you divide all through by the coefficient of a to make it to be exactly 1. And you factor out, subtracting. Remember, we take the constant term, we send it to the right, and of course, you know we cannot factor this, and that is why we are adding to both sides of the equation using b/2 all squared. Thank you so much. I believe strongly that now you are able to master, you've been able to master quadratic equations, because we've touched absolutely most of the methods, and probably these are the most common methods you can be asked: graphing, quadratic formula, factoring, and of course completing the square. As you already know, I advise you to always do much more practice. Go for more examples as you keep solving and practicing, and before you know it, there will be no issues. Of course, the issues will be limited. Thank you so much. Like, comment, share, bring your opinions, and continue to share to make somebody to get this knowledge out there. I remain your boy, Prince D. Much love and God bless.